Today I'm honored to invite Anna on my podcast, the founder of the Relating Academy, human behavior specialist and relating coach. Over the past decade, she's helped hundreds of entrepreneurs with their habits and relationships. Her latest book, Habit Freedom, helps people ditch limiting habits, enhance performance, and enrich relationships. Stay tuned for this podcast episode. Thank you.
Pretty much the foundation of all the other practices, and in the last 20 years I've done all these different practices, and then when I landed on Vipassana I was like, this is the actual building block, and it's phenomenal. It's extremely hard, and it's the first thing that I tell people who think that it's a good idea. I'm like, please be prepared for it being extremely hard. It's the hardest thing that I've done, and I've done many hard things. Sitting with yourself and your thoughts for 10 days is very hard, like I said, but it's also the most life-changing thing that I've ever done.
And you've done it, this is your second time, right?
Second time this year.
And the first time is quite different to the second time in even course material. How did you find that, if you feel okay to speak about what it looks like?
Course material is the same. So you repeat, you do the same thing over and over again in terms of the technique. So you learn the technique. But it is very different because obviously the first time you've never done it before, so you don't really know what to expect. And the second time you do have an expectation of it, so you try to like lower those and be like, I'm going in with a beginner's mind, with a fresh mind, and see what happens. But I was a different person 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. And so the person that went through that Vipassana is not the same person that went through one a month ago.
And to my understanding, I thought that the first time you do it and the second time you do it, there's like different videos, or no? But it also can be more strict on the second timers. So your first time can be more lenient.
That's right. So the actual course material is exactly the same. The videos are exactly the same. You can find it on Spotify, actually. If you search Goenka, and they have all of the discourses on Spotify, which I find very fascinating, that you can get the material on Spotify. And but the second time is more strict in terms of like you're not supposed to eat after 12 and things like that, so you're fasting more. It's stricter, so they do expect more of you in a sense, because you know what you're doing, or you should, but you never really know what you're doing.
And what led you to first do a Vipassana and your second journey as well?
Great question, Felix. So the first one, a friend of mine, this is how it actually happened. So I had done silence retreats before. My first silent retreat I did about 18 years ago in India. I did 8 days of silence. That was my introduction to meditation. So I don't know if you know this about me, but I don't like dip my toe into the water like a little bit. I dive in, see if I hate it, and then I dive in some more.
Fair.
I'm a bit of an extremist in that regard. So I had done silence retreats before, but not Vipassana specifically. And then a friend suggested it. We were on a beach one day, and she said, wouldn't it be nice to do it together? You're not speaking, but then on the last day you get to, speak, and it's nice to connect with a friend on that day. And then she couldn't do it, and then I just decided to do it. So somehow it just came into my orbit and into my consciousness again, and it just felt right. It felt like I had that 10 days to invest, because 10 days is a big investment. It's free to learn, so it's run completely on donation. So you go to Worcester, you live there for free, you get free food and boarding, but the taking out 10-11 days out of your life is a big ask. So it just felt like I could do that. And I came out of there completely, everything was different. It was so bewildering almost. It felt like my outside world was reflecting my internal world. And now I've always known that's like what happens, but this was like just like very, very tangible. Like all of a sudden other people in my life were starting to look after their health and started to have better habits and things like that. And it was just it was really, really, really interesting. And then this time around, this year, 2.5 years later, I just, one day in the shower, as most great ideas happen, I don't know if you're the same.
I mean, fair. All great singing.
Yeah, the one day in the shower, I was actually going through a bit of a dip. So I was feeling a bit desperate. I felt like my manifestations weren't really happening, or the things that I was trying to create, and it was very frustrating. And again, I had that gap, which is rare in my business, where I'm like, okay, I can move around a couple things, but I don't have the most demand on my time right now. So I was like, if not now, when? And also September is it's spring, so it's much easier on the body than peak summer or peak winter. So I would definitely, if anyone's like wondering what time of year, do it in like a mild time of year, because then it's a lot more comfortable. And so yeah, all the stars aligned, and I went and made it happen.
And then you get there?
Yeah, so I got there and I set an intention. My intention for this one was to feel loved. Because on a deep level, I knew that one of the reasons why my manifestations and creations weren't happening is because I wasn't in the receiving state. And I couldn't be in the receiving state if I didn't feel loved by creation, by myself, by others. And I remember we were on a walk with my mom like a couple of days before I left, and I asked her, I was like, do you feel loved? Because intellectually, I know I'm loved. It's obvious. I have so many people who love me, but I had a really hard time feeling it. And so I set that intention, and I went there with that intention. And I don't know if it was day 7 or 8, but I had an experience where I felt like I was like in the womb.
Oh.
Yeah, it was very trippy. And like I felt so loved and so wanted by creation, by the universe, by everything. And just like my heart blew open, and it was just, wow. I hadn't felt like that in a very long time.
Yeah, I think there's just something in that isolation of conversation that's like, I think people can either give us energy or take away energy, but to get away from all that and just see where like consciousness takes us. And like, I think after a Vipassana journey, it's quite common to feel very energized and very well rested and well fed as well.
The difference between Vipassana and lots of different other meditations is that Vipassana, as Goenka explains it, the teacher, draws out the impurities of your mind. Versus a lot of other meditations like focus you, right? And focus is cool, and it's it's helpful, but drawing out all the things that aren't serving you, like clearing out the weeds in your garden of your mind, that is what then allows you to unbecome all of these stories and beliefs, limiting and otherwise, that are holding you back.
That's very true. It actually, I can get that a bit from yoga, but in a much less deep sense. How would you compare Vipassana, but maybe you can't, to any other practices, or?
Of course, yeah, you can. And so, for example, compared to my first meditation retreat, which was 8 days in an ashram called Art of Living, just outside of, in India there, outside of Bangalore, about 40 minutes an hour outside of Bangalore. I remember when we broke our silence, they really had us meditate on our first word. Like, what do we want our first word to be? And I will never forget that first word that I uttered after those 8 days, because they really put emphasis and helped us value that word. And that word, by the way, for me back then, in my early 20s, was thank you. Because like the only thing that was just like overwhelming, just like thank you. In Vipassana, for example, you don't have that. You don't really have such an emphasis on your first word, or they don't really guide you into noble. They do tell you that it is meant to be noble speech. So you go from noble silence to noble speech. but they don't really guide you on like that first word. So like that's a difference. There are lots of differences. Another difference between like Vipassana and yoga, for example, or Vipassana or any other modality, is that, because I hear lots of people say like, oh, yoga is my meditation, or walking is my meditation, gym is my meditation. To which I just want to say, the only meditation that is meditation is meditation. Simply because meditation is the art of sitting still and not giving in to aversions and cravings. So meaning if I have an itch, I don't scratch it. So you're training your brain to not give in to cravings and aversions.
True.
You don't do that when you're out on a walk, or you're going to gym, or you're doing yoga. That is not meditation. It's a valuable and healthy form of practice, but it's completely different. So in terms of like really training your mind as a muscle, meditation is meditation, and the most fundamental one in terms of like just what's needed to remove all suffering out of life, Vipassana has all of it in it.
And how has Vipassana affected your work in life coaching?
Yeah.
And what are the...
Relating coaching. It gives me a lot of clarity and focus. So it really, because you know, with all the distractions that we have today, then it's really important to train our minds, because social media and all the other distractions are untraining our minds every single day. So it gives me the opportunity to write very clearly, because I'm an author. I'm releasing my new book now, and focus on the right things. The ideas, I'm very creative, so all the ideas, it gives space for the ideas to come through. It gives space for me to connect with the right people. Like I said, my manifestations start to happen. So I'm like, oh yes, this person should be a business partner, and let me structure this partnership in this way, and things like that. Those types of ideas become much more clear. So what I'm basically saying is, I get a lot of downloads that are very actionable and easy to implement, and feel in flow.
That, I suppose, phones easily disrupt that kind of flow? Or how do you maintain that kind of flow in the real world, shall we say?
You maintain your practice. And I am nowhere perfect. Like the first week, I probably did 6 out of 7 days. And then the second week, also like 5, 6, 7 days. And then the third week, like 4, 5 days. And now I'm like 1, 2, 3 days a week, So, and like trying my best to like come back to my practice as much as possible. So it's never a perfect art or experience. It's always just doing my best to, like, even if I can only do half an hour meditation instead of an hour, I try to do that, just so that I maintain the practice and keep that flow.
100%, because the Vipassana prescribed meditation can be quite drastic to some.
It's 2 hours a day, so 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the afternoon, and that's it's quite hard. I don't want to say impossible, but for me it's quite hard to fit into my schedule.
Valid.
The best that I can do is 1 hour a day, and even that I struggle with, so I do half an hour to an hour depending on the day.
And when you're at Vipassana, do you feel like you have a lot of good ideas come to you? Like for me, I had a lot of ideas come up and I got quite attached to my ideas, and I realized that was really the ego creating escapes and living in the futures. But like, and there's no notepads or anything to write ideas down, so I kind of became obsessed with remembering them. But then it's to realize that it's not about craving, it's not about avoiding, it's just about letting go. And yeah, so if I were to redo it, I think I would try and be even less less focused on remembering things and more focused on letting things go. I don't know if you can speak on that at all.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I do relate to getting ideas and getting attached to some of them. I also know that the good ideas will come back. Like when the time is right and a week or two later and it's time to implement or take notes down, then the right ideas will come back. If it's meant for me, it will be there. And I also have lots of rubbish thoughts and ideas. Like before the good ones come, it's like, this nonsense gets pulled out of me. It's like, what's that thought? Like, who is that? Where did that come from? Like, why are you thinking that? That's bizarre, you know? And it's like this incoherent script of nonsense for a long time before the good ideas start to happen.
True. Yeah. Yeah, it's very much a cleaning out of the brain in some ways, but also not a judging, just observing. But yeah, it's even similar to what SN Goenka says. It's like, it's okay to try different things, but when you find something that works, dig deep with the well. And I think that, I mean, that you kind of were saying that's how you are, like you're quite obsessive in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we kind of need to be to get the results that we are expecting, I think. Yeah. And how long have you been life coaching?
So I sold my security business 10 years ago.
Wow.
I started there was a Johannesburg security company, and I started the Western Cape branch, and we grew that over 18 months to about 1,000 people. And I sold that, like I said, 10 years ago, and I started coaching business, sales, business, mindset, and all that. So that was primarily what I did for about 6-7 years. And then I started the Relating Academy, so helping people with habits and relationships for the past 2 years. So all in all, I've been coaching for about 10 years. But I've been in the human behavior, I've been studying human behavior and personal development and that field for like 20 years.
So did the security to the coaching feel like a natural evolution in some sense?
It came from, I was going to lots of events and I started to make friends with the speakers and the coaches there. And I figured like I could do what they did.
Mm.
So yeah, I just talked to them about like, I really believe in mentorship. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for those conversations with people I looked up to. And they were like, oh, you have a cool life. You charge $30,000 an hour. I want to do that. You don't know that much more than I do. You know, like I think I can figure this out. And having those conversations helped me then study and learn the next thing and connect with the next person and then get that client and then get the next one and figure it out along the way. So it's not like the most seamless or natural thing, but I did have my first coaching client before I left the security industry. And then once I got a knack for it, I was like, oh yeah, this is really something I can do. And what I loved is that when I really got into the coaching space, there was this huge difference between security and coaching. And security, every phone call I got was a challenging experience. Like, your God, is sleeping, is stealing, is doing something wrong. There's never a phone call that's like, I love your God so much, thank you so much for being amazing. On the coaching side, it's like, you changed my life, my business is doing 10x, my relationship is saved, like my marriage is thriving, I've like stopped drinking, stopped overeating, whatever the habit is, like there's just a lot of gratitude. And I was like, I really like this gratitude.
It's almost like you got, it sounded like there was a lot of people involved, so you can get quite separated from the end result. And then it's like you're only getting the criticisms. But like, whereas the coaching, it feels more one-on-one, it feels more rewarding.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing.
Look, security was also very rewarding because to make a difference in people's lives like that is incredible. There's some sites that still go around Cape Town, and it's still the same guards that I put on site 10 years ago, and they remember me, and I obviously remember them, and that feels like, that feels like a legacy, and I'm very proud of that. So it is also very rewarding, just in a different way.
Yeah, it's definitely solopreneur versus entrepreneur. It's definitely something to be said. And yeah, what was your journey of growing the security company? Do you feel like speaking on that?
I had no idea what I was doing. But I had a really a desire to figure it out. It didn't matter what I did, I was going to figure it out. I came from selling wine. So we had a wine export business. Awesome. And we ran out of money in that business. And after that, I started the security business. And I just knew that I had a degree in property studies. So probably someone I know somewhere is buying security, I think. And so I just started speaking with people. And the first building that I signed the contract was the building that I was living in. So that was
Nice.
kind of like an easy one. And then there was like the next month was the next building. Then we signed a contract a month. And so there was a lot of luck involved, and a lot of just figuring it out on the go, and mentorship as well. Like, you know, obviously the Joburg company, of which we were like the sister branch type of thing, they had all the systems, a lot of them, and, you know, I got a lot of guidance and all of that. So I was definitely not doing it completely on my own, which again attributed to a lot of the success.
100%. And you spoke about mentorship, which is so important. But yeah, I think a lot of people don't know how to get mentorship. What would be your advice? And like, has mentorship always flowed to you, or has that been a journey that's evolved?
That's a great question. So mentorship comes in many different forms, from books to podcasts to in-person conversations. The best way to start to get a mentor is to find someone, whatever your circle looks like, find someone who's doing the best in that circle. It doesn't have to be the best of all time. It doesn't have to be the best in life or in the world. It's just the best in your circle. And learn from them whatever you're there to learn, because that person will know someone who's the best an increment further, and would lead you down the road. I find I've really held myself back sometimes when I'm looking for like the star mentor, or like I want, you know, some kind of mentor. I've actually reached out to mentors that are like way above my pay grade, and they respectfully declined because like not a good fit. I'm just not ready for them. And so that taught me to humble myself, be like, okay, what am I ready for? And then learn at that level as much as I can, and then move ahead. So yeah, everyone can find a mentor in their circle. Find that one person, learn what you can, and then move on to the next level, would be my advice.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think people are more accessible than you think. Like, especially people who are making money off social media, it's their job to stay up to date with that social media. You know, I think sending an email doesn't hurt, sending a direct message doesn't hurt. And it's all a numbers game at the end of the day. How it is, I think nowadays with the internet, like, you can really reach anyone. But it's about knowing who you want to reach and why, and being strategic with it, but just putting yourself out there. I think that's even what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had lots of misses with mentors as well. I've asked mentors to be mentors sometimes, and then neither of us, I didn't know how to be a mentee, they didn't know how to be a mentor, and that kind of like, just fell apart. And that's also part of the learning, and then that wasn't meant to be. But I was just like never shy to ask.
100%. And I think it's very important, just because someone's a mentor in one thing doesn't mean they have to be a mentor in everything. Like, for example, I had a gym mentor, and like I learned a lot from him on how to work out. But it doesn't mean you have to learn. You can also learn who not to be from people, and who you do want to be and who you don't want to be. So you can learn from the good and the bad, is what I'm saying, but also know when to take what resonates and when to let go what doesn't.
Yeah, have that discernment is very, very important, because no one has everything figured out. We are 8 billion puzzle pieces, and everyone has something to teach. And everyone is also learning things and is having areas of development. So understanding that people are always on the spectrum from development to mastery and mastery to development. And yeah, just identifying that one thing that you want to learn, whether it's the best, someone who has an amazing relationship or marriage, and you want to learn that, or someone who has an incredible business or an impact, or as a philanthropist and you want to understand that world. And yeah, just learning little bits at a time.
100%. And what would you say, like, is your average client, or who is coming to you, and what is their like themes that are developing like through all your years of coaching, if that makes sense?
I predominantly work with entrepreneurs. 90% of the clients that have come and worked with me are entrepreneurs. And the themes are things like balance, like family versus business, and understanding why they are so driven, and why they sometimes forsake their family for their business, and understanding when enough is enough, because a lot of them are also driven from this not enoughness, and they don't understand that, you know, there is a point where you can slow down and you can systemize, and you don't have to hit the next million. You can hit, you know, a reasonable next milestone type of thing. So it's a lot of like uncovering childhood beliefs or childhood protection mechanisms, reparenting the inner child, whether it comes to coping mechanisms with habits like eating or alcohol or smoking or anything else, or pornography, to relating and healing relationships with their parents, whether their parents are there or not, healing the relationship with the divine masculine, with the divine feminine, and then how that then trickles into their romantic partnerships and relationships, and then the relationship with their kids. So yeah, a lot of entrepreneurs are really good at investing into their business, and then investing less into their relationships. And so I help them invest more into their relationship with themselves via healthy habits, and then into the relationship with others.
What are some healthy habits you can recommend? Or is it I guess, a per case basis as well?
Well, healthy habits are things that help our nervous system regulate in a healthy and sustainable way. Unhealthy habits are the opposite.
Fair.
Dysregulate our nervous system, basically. But even looking at habits within relationships, like what is your habits in your relationships, and how does that translate into the results that you're getting? You know, how often are you being intimate in terms of just like, you know, recognizing each other and turning towards each other's bids for attention. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Julie and John Gottman.
No.
They are like the mom and dad of relationship coaching and relationship therapy. They talk often about these bids for connection or bids for attention. So I could say like, look, honey, there's a bird outside, and you could be like writing like on your
It's
laptop.
just a bird,
or whatever.
who
It's just-
cares?
exactly. Or if you recognize it's a bid for connection or a bid for attention, you'd be like, oh, look, it's a bird, you know, and because it's interesting to me, it's interesting to you too. And so understanding your habits with like bids for connection, bids for attention, things like that, becomes very powerful, because then you start to see like where things are going not so right.
That's very fascinating. It kind of reminds me of authentic relating. Is that similar? Can you speak on what authentic relating is?
Yeah, authentic relating is having its day. So a lot more people are familiar with it. I don't know all the techniques of authentic relating. I've worked with authentic relating coaches, and I've had authentic relating coaches coach within the Relating Academy as well. And there's I mean, it's in the name basically. It's learning to be authentic and vulnerable, which is, you know, trusting that the other person won't hurt you with the information that you share with them, and really creating also the container to feel safe and to feel vulnerable and to feel authentic is also a big part of authentic relating. So yeah, it's definitely part of what we do, but it's not the only thing.
And I suppose, how could people be better at communicating boundaries, and how important are boundaries in friendships, romantic relationships, work relationships?
My favorite definition of a boundary is that a boundary is something that allows me to love you and me at the same time, because I have to do both. I have to love me and I have to love you, and so a boundary is helping me do that. And so when I communicate that a boundary is good for you and for me, it's not bad for you and good for me, or the other way around. It is win-win. And when a lot of it is like sales. When you sell it to the other person that, look, my boundary is that I need to go to bed at 9 p.m., for example. Like say I'm in a couple, and the one partner wants to go to bed at 11 and watch TV or whatever, and then the other one really needs to go to bed at 9 p.m. because like that's her sleep cycle or whatever. That's my boundary. the way I sell that is going like, it's good for you when I'm all energetic and healthy in the morning, and then I can make breakfast and, you know, we can dance all day or whatever. It's not so good if I don't get enough sleep and I'm grumpy and less than optimal. So it's really about learning basically the art of sales.
Yeah, that's very true. I think otherwise it's quite easy to end up resenting someone when you don't reach your needs. That's especially if you don't communicate the boundaries.
Yeah. So on that topic of needs, something that I communicate to all of the people that I work with, especially couples, is that needs are not negotiable. It's important that your needs are met and your needs are met. It doesn't have to be at the same time, it doesn't have to be today, but in general, over an average period of time, all needs need to be met. Otherwise, resentments do build, and then compromises do lead to breakdowns.
100%. And when you're not working, what are your interests?
Oh, I like this question. I love a dress up. So anything to do with like festivals, music. I'm learning to DJ. I think music is such a gift from the gods. It really lights me up. I listen to music almost every day. It's all the nuances in a song and the creation of it just is incredible. So anything to do with music. I'd love to start singing. I haven't started singing yet, but that's on the cards soon. I think I'm just saying that so I can hold myself accountable to that as well. So music, anything in nature. So walks, swims in nature, like friendships. I nurture my friendships quite religiously. So walks with friends in nature with some music. Chef's kiss. That is like my triad of heaven. So yeah, those things.
Yeah, I think music is such an important part in like vibration, manifestation, mantra. Like, do you find how different music affects you differently? And I suppose there's seasons for different music. And some people say humans are emotional junkies. So when we're sad, we listen to sad music because we want to feel super sad. When we're happy, we want to listen to happy music because we want to feel very happy. What's your thoughts?
It depends. So when I'm sad, the reason why I listen to sad music or watch a very sad movie, like I will Google saddest movie to watch because of emotional alchemy. For me to get through sadness, I need to get to the other side. And so I will dig deeper to alchemize it, and I'll listen to the saddest music and I'll watch the saddest movie so that I can feel the next emotion. The next emotion after sadness is usually anger, because there's like a light that lights up and you're like, oh, I was sad, but now I'm a little bit angry. Now after the anger alchemizes, then you start to see, starts getting lighter and all the other emotions start to appear. The interesting thing about anger and sadness is that it's two emotions on two sides of the same coin. Because if you're sad enough for long, you'll become angry. And if you're angry enough for long enough, you'll become sad. So a lot of people work on things like, oh, like I'm really angry. Like I see in typical couples, like the guy will be really angry and have like anger issues, and she will carry a lot of sadness. And what we actually need to do is then actually address his sadness and her anger.
Yeah, I've actually definitely seen that before. I've seen that play out. That makes sense.
Yeah, because it's masquerading as one, but
it's almost like both emotions need to be felt, and it's like a team journey of feeling the full spectrum in some way.
Yeah. So music is very powerful in helping us alchemize those things, and yes, it will help us feel more sad. But sometimes if I'm sad and I want to snap out of it, I'll listen to a happy song. So it really depends on what I'm aiming to do, what my intention is.
And what would you say are some healthy ways to work through sadness and anger?
Alchemize it. Alchemize it. So anger is a tricky one because if it's directed externally, it can be very hurtful and harmful. If it's directed internally, it can also be hurtful and harmful. So it's about alchemizing it into, like, not externally, not internally, but just witnessing it almost.
Like punching a pillow?
You know, there's studies that punching and doing like angry sports makes you more angry, actually. So there's a couple different studies. Some say it helps, some say it doesn't, but the latest ones actually say it doesn't help.
Okay.
It's more about then regulating your nervous system. So the most fundamental one is breath, nature, getting in tune with
Sound of birds.
putting your feet on the ground, dip in the ocean, whatever you need to do to just like reset your breath and your nervous system.
I even find like sometimes when I'm sad or angry, it's requiring more energy. So it's like eating more nourishing foods, you know?
Yeah. Even though you don't want to. You usually want to do the thing that's going to hurt you further. But then the super consciousness, when you wake up, you're like, oh no, I need to do the thing that's good for me and not the thing that I'm craving. And this is, going back full circle to Vipassana. This is why it's so powerful, because you learn not to give in to your cravings and you learn to listen to your higher self or your super consciousness.
Yeah, and then you even start to crave Vipassana when you feel like the need, would you say? And you start to build these relationships with all these tools that we gather over the years. Oh, I'm craving that. I feel like when we can get to the level of understanding our truest, highest intentions cravings, it's like when you're craving maybe even chips to snack, maybe you're craving the fat in there, and maybe you're even craving an avo more than that, like chips. But when you can really get to the point where you can trust your cravings and like you're craving the right things because you have all the tools and the understandings, and you know that you can have a lower desire, but it won't fulfill you the same way. And you've maybe even acted on the lower desire before to try it out, to realize that's not really what you want, even though you think that's what you want. But I suppose that's the journey of knowing what you want and don't want out of life.
Can I share an arbitrary thing? I was once walking in the forest and I noticed like an itchy bite from a mosquito. And I was thinking, this is a really bizarre thing that creation did, because the good thing to do is not to scratch the itch, because then it goes away and subsides. The unhealthier thing is to like scratch it until it bleeds open, right? And I was like, why did creation do this? Why did it make us want to do the thing that's not so good for us? And I don't have a complete answer to that, but the answer that I came up with in that moment was to create an opportunity to train the mind. To not give in to the thing that's immediately gratifying.
Yeah, it reminds me of this thing. It says, if you pray for patience, you will get opportunities to be patient.
Yes.
And that's a very good opportunity to be patient.
Exactly.
And yeah, what do you think, or why do you think so many people doubt themselves and self-sabotage themselves?
All comes down to nature and nurture. And a lot of the programming happens in childhood. And a lot of adults are running around this world not actually being adults. A lot of adults are wounded children. And when we don't take the time to uncover that wounding and reparent ourselves and heal that, then we sabotage and doubt ourselves and all these things. I have had the supreme privilege of having 20 years of healing, in terms of I've been an entrepreneur, so I've been able to take time off when I needed to do retreats and ceremonies and this course and that course. Not a lot of people get to do that because there's a lot of responsibilities and you have to earn money and then you have kids and a mortgage and all these other things. So I recognize my extreme privilege that I got to do that, and I got to learn a lot of that. But when we are bogged down in the world with, like I said, all these responsibilities, we do operate from that inner child, wounded self, and we repeat what we don't repair. So as long as that's not repaired, then the sabotage and the doubt keeps repeating.
100%. And how do you think people should transition from a child to an adult, or that is a natural process that sometimes doesn't get completed in the same time, or are we always becoming more of an adult, but also tapping into our inner child?
That's a very powerful question. And a long time ago, humans had distinct initiations. For even in African cultures these days, at 16, the boys go into the bush and they have to survive and, you know, go through a painful experience, and then they become a man. And in the Western world, we've lost that. For women, it used to be childbirth that initiated women into adulthood and into motherhood. But now that, and I'm not a mother yet, so now that we are having children later and later, our initiation is happening later and later. So we're running around as maidens for 20, 30, sometimes 40 years of our life. So a lot of the time, some kind of challenging initiation needs to happen to birth the adult. And that is why I love things like Vipassana, because that can be initiation. That's why I love things like plant medicine, because that can be initiation. I'm not saying it will be, because for me, for example, I've had dozens of initiations to get to the adult woman that I am today. It's not like I had one ceremony and one Vipassana. I was like, now I'm a woman. So there is an element of like it continuing to evolve the adulthood and the womanhood in myself personally. But there needs to be challenges. Things need to be hard, you know, like childbirth, like an initiation.
Yeah, I really believe life either challenges us or we create our own challenges. But it's so important to like embrace the challenges, because either way, like there will be challenges. So it's better to choose them and like turn around to the shadow and face the shadow and do the work. But it's really up to us how painful we will let it become before we make the change. We only make a change when things are painful enough to do so. Like people want the 6-minute abs, but there's no permanence in that. It's in the hard work, like getting in shape. You like put in all those hours to then realize, why would I eat bad to sabotage what the work I've done? And it's really the way we do anything is the way we do everything. To like taking care of our bodies. I mean, you even mentioned often entrepreneurs and just people in general struggle to invest in themselves because there's a disconnect of taking care of ourselves and how that affects our environment and our worlds. But it's very important to take care of ourselves, and I think it's a lifelong journey that you decide to be on. Have you always been on this quest of self-betterment, improvement?
Can I share what my definition of privilege is?
Yeah.
My definition of privilege is choosing your own challenges. So challenges, are, like you said, are guaranteed in life. They're not a bug, they're a feature of life. And I've been lucky enough where I've had in my life where challenges were chosen for me, and I felt less privileged. And then I've had also many times where I've chosen the privilege. I've chosen the privilege of starting a business or going to gym or investing in this relationship or this friendship. And yeah, I think that's a powerful thing to remember. If you're in a position where you're choosing your challenges, no matter how hard they can be, like you're in a marriage, but you're choosing this marriage and you're choosing the challenge of this marriage, or you're in a business and you know it's not going well, but you're choosing this challenge, you're privileged. Because a lot of people in the world don't get the opportunity to do that. Have I always been on this path? The short answer is yes. But the longer answer is the path is one of forgetting and remembering. In order to remember, we need to forget. There is no remembering without forgetting. And I'm repeating myself. And how good that remembering feels when that magic is on. You're lit up. You're like connected. You wouldn't feel like that if you were constantly on, you know. So being human is a process of forgetting and remembering. So while I've always been on the path, there's been many times that I've been in the phase of forgetfulness. Just to remember again, just to forget, and just to remember over and over again.
Is there any mentors that come to mind that have helped you remember?
All of them. from my teachers, like back in the day with human behavior, like Dr. John DeMartini, to later on Dr. Joe Dispenza, to ayahuasca, psilocybin, San Pedro, all the different teacher plants. They've been mentors. Every person that I've met along the way, also a mentor, big or small.
How important is plant medicine to you and just people or humans' journeys, would you say?
It's not the end all and be all. I'm not in the school where everyone should do it and it's only good. It's very, very, very challenging, very hard. It's definitely part of my journey, and I'm very grateful that it is, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I also have learned over the years that most of the time it doesn't provide solutions, it provides more questions. So you go there with like, I want to fix, this is my intention, da 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 da, and then come out of there with more questions, going like, wait a minute, So I don't think that the teacher plants would be here if it wasn't important. The consciousness of these teacher plants is so powerful and incredible and intelligent. The intelligence is intelligent. That it's a co-creation. And there's that theory that humans wouldn't have developed the brains that humans have without psilocybin and psychedelics. Basically, we would have, if we believe in the theory of evolution, they would have stayed apes, type of thing. I don't know if that's true or not. That's up for debate. But the point is that they are our allies and they're here to help us. It's also important, not to abuse them, to use them with huge respect and reverence, and to be very discerning and mindful with where you get it from, what teachers you align with, and if there's any doubt or you're unsure and you're like, should I do it, should I not, do not. Rather, until you feel safe. Look, a part of you is always going to feel unsure because your ego doesn't want to die. And you will guaranteed go through a death through this plant experience. And so there's this fine line between I'm fearful because my ego doesn't want to die, or I'm fearful because it's not in alignment.
100%. Yeah, I think for me the biggest thing is you have your whole life. So to not feel there's such a rush, and you'll know if it feels right or not, but I think very much like you said, if there's a speck of doubt, patience, and the opportunities will rise up and they will fade, and when it feels right and aligns, go for it. And how could you compare the different plant medicines?
They are all quite different, but they work, they work together as well. For example, ayahuasca led me to iboga. So I met my iboga shamans at an ayahuasca retreat. And I, for the past 3 years, iboga has been my primary teacher, my primary mentor, actually. And so it's hard to describe, because I also don't like giving anyone any ideas or expectations when they go in for their first one. Because I had the most beautiful visual of infinity and felt like I was part of infinity, during that one iboga ceremony, doesn't mean that anyone else is going to.
True.
Or just because I puked my guts out in that other ceremony doesn't mean that someone is going to.
True.
So it's just, for me, realizing that I've never walked away from a ceremony the same person that I walked into it. And whatever intention I set, in a roundabout, sometimes fucked up way, I've always gotten it.
And it almost reminds me of this really great quote that says, retreats about re-entry. It's these retreats, go here, but it's cool. But when you come back to your habits, your routines, how is it different? And I think Vipassana is such a good example of that. I suppose plant medicine ceremonies as well. You come back to your world, and then it's about implementing changes or coming with a new perspective. Could you speak on how one can re-enter after retreats in a
Integration is one of my favorite topics to ever talk about, and I honestly don't think that it's done well enough with retreats, with ceremonies, and even with Vipassana. Granted, Vipassana is a non-for-profit, and maybe they don't have the resources, but
It's also quite an old technique.
it's a very old technique. Exactly, yeah. But to have integration support afterwards from any of these altered state modalities, because whether it's Vipassana meditation or ayahuasca, you're altering your state. And so the integration part is the most important part, because otherwise you're just a junkie. And when I met someone at an ayahuasca ceremony who did like hundreds, it was a lot. Like, I was surprised. I was like, and it was in a relatively short amount of time as well. And that, whatever, that's their journey. I'm also not judging them, because like, if you need to do 100 to get that one lesson, do you, buddy? Like, you have my compassion, because it's very hard. But the integration part, number one, surrounding yourself with other people who understand, because sometimes you're the first one in your family to ever venture into this world, and then you come back into your family or into your circle, and nobody gets it, and nobody can support you, and nobody can pick up that, like, maybe your energy's off when you're a little down, or so starting to like seek out community and people who do understand or who do know that and have some experience is very, very powerful. So that is probably the most important thing. And then just like continuing the learning, understanding that the learning never ends. It doesn't end when you leave the retreat, to read the books and listen to the podcasts, and keep like that open mind. And you will slip back into the old habits. That's guaranteed. That's part of the journey. It's not like you go there and like, clean slate and you're never going to have the old habits again. But how are you going to react, and how are you going to treat yourself when you do that? Can you have more compassion? Can you have more love? And can you self-correct in a more regulated way?
100%. Self-regulation is very important. And how important do you think, like, doing healthy routines, like meditating, and is there any others that come to mind? I suppose we try different things, and we find what works for us in the end. And for me, it's big. I'm big on, you need to find something that you can imagine doing for the rest of your life. And it's really seeing things that way. It's not about diets, it's lifestyle changes, right? And yeah, how do you see it? Like, is it an everyday thing, or there's also phases and seasons for different things?
I have a bit of an alternative view on it. Like, if you speak to some very successful people who've built brands and businesses that have really left a huge impact and legacy on the world, they will say that when their business was up and coming, there were no routines, there was no meditations, there was just survival and grinding and like doing whatever it takes, and late nights and early mornings. And there's a season for that, and then there's a season for a slower morning routine and meditation and some journaling and a cold plunge and a walk and all of these things. And I lived in Bali for a long time, like 5 years, and all of these practices, like this morning routine, this yoga, and I'm watching all these broke people, and I'm asking you, like, where's your money practice? That's also important, as well as your spiritual and meditation and morning practice. So it just depends on what season you're in life, and what code you're trying to unlock. And if you're trying to unlock the business code or the relationship code or the health code or whatever it is, then do what you need to do the rituals and the practices for that code specifically.
Yeah, I mean, you see a lot of people sacrificing their health for wealth, but I suppose there's a balance, and we have all of our cups that we try and fill, and when we focus on one too much, other ones get neglected. But I suppose that is the journey, and I suppose that's the journey of a lot of entrepreneurs. There's definitely often a period of, the modern day they call it the monk mode. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, or like people turning away from their communities and like focusing.
Yeah.
And there's seasons in that. Yeah, I'm curious how you could recommend someone to change their life if they feel ready. How do they do that?
They find someone within their circle that's doing better than them, and they talk to that person, because that person is in your orbit to guide you. And furthermore, you obviously listen to books and read books and listen to podcasts and things like that. And instead of going wide and listening to everything and reading everything, read less and integrate those things. So like learn and then integrate. Learn and then integrate. That would change the world more than consuming every morsel of information and data that's available.
Yeah, there's definitely a journey of learning and then executing. And for me as a creative, it's always about time between ideation and execution and shortening that time. But it's also about knowing when you've learned enough and when you can take action. But no one's going to give you permission. So you have to give yourself permission, but you have to be honest with yourself about what you know and what you don't know. And having the humility to ask for help, ask for mentorship, and to learn. I mean, even in my journey, I've been an entrepreneur since about 2018, and there's been more of a journey of, yeah, I can build my own thing, great, but how much can I learn from what other people are building? Maybe even working for them. Doesn't have to be forever, but you can work for others and learn a lot in that sense. But also, there's a time to build your own thing, and there's a time to learn from other people's things.
Yes, agreed, absolutely.
Yeah. Is there any closing thoughts or any questions you feel like I haven't asked?
So my latest book, Habit Freedom, is my baby. Because after I started the Relating Academy, I realized that you cannot have a relationship with someone else that's healthy and nourishing and thriving if you don't have a relationship with yourself that's healthy, nourishing and thriving. And that's where I turned to teaching people about habits and habit freedom. And people are like, what's habit freedom? And I explain it like this. People say they want financial freedom or time freedom or lifestyle freedom, and you can't have any of those things if you don't have habit freedom. Habit freedom is the ability to choose your own habits. And most people actually don't. They are, enslaved to the food industry and like the sugars and additives and preservatives and everything in there, to the advertisements and media that they see, to the alcohol that's so freely drunken in Hollywood movies and normalizes and glamorizes substances and drugs. And so starting to like wake up to, is this habit serving me? Like doing an inventory for yourself, going like, these are my habits, these are my health habits, these are my relationship habits, these are my wealth habits. And understanding, am I actively choosing these, or were these chosen for me by society, by programming, by my family, by my culture, etc. And then when you notice a habit that isn't serving you, we are very good at justifying it. Going like, well, that person eats even worse, or that person smokes even more, or that person does even less exercise, so I'm okay. But you're not doing yourself any favors doing that, So it's about like getting as real as possible, and what I call taking unreasonable responsibility. And on the one side you have radical responsibility, which is fair enough, but unreasonable responsibility takes it even further. Like, can you take so much responsibility that it's unreasonable? I borrowed that word from the book Unreasonable Hospitality. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a brilliant book on like how to have like the level of hospitality that people will not forget, and just talk about for days, weeks, and years to come. And I want people to start to ignite that level of unreasonable responsibility in their own lives, especially when it comes to their habits, when it comes to health, their relationships, and their wealth.
We've been talking about accountability and responsibility. What are some ways that people can be accountable and ways that you keep yourself accountable? You spoke about extreme accountability.
Unreasonable. Again, I'm going to mention like the people that surround you are very important, because if you have people who have extremely high standards for themselves, and they're not going to tolerate someone who doesn't or who slacks off. And so I love surrounding myself who have really high standards for themselves, because then my standards raise and vice versa. And then a lot of it also has to do with undoing some of that childhood wounding we talked about, and understanding who is the saboteur. For example, I'll give a quick example. I once was struggling with a money block, so I couldn't get further than this level in business. I think it was like $25,000-$30,000 a month, and it was just, I don't know, I just kept on hitting up against that level. And then I did a hypnosis by Marissa Peer. And the thing that came up was that when I was about 10 years old, I shoplifted and I got into trouble. And that left a big shame imprint on myself, on my inner child. And so I just didn't feel worthy or deserving. Like, I just felt shameful from that experience. And I had no idea that was the thing that was sabotaging my financial efforts. And so it's like learning things like that, working with a coach, working with mentors, understanding yourself on a deeper and deeper level. Then once that goes away or breaks down and releases you, then you're free to be more and more accountable to yourself.
It's almost like if we see ourselves as a bad people,
yes,
and shame is a good, strong emotion that can feel bad, that if we see ourselves as bad people, then we're like, well, bad people don't deserve good things.
Yes.
But then, yeah, it's very important to change how we see ourselves.
Exactly. And the accountability comes naturally. If you're forcing accountability, it's not going to last. It's about setting yourself up so that the accountability is easy.
I mean, for me, like writing things on a wall, writing things on paper and putting it on the wall, especially like somewhere that you're going to see it often. I mean, for me, it used to be quite obsessive to the point I've had quite a steep weight loss journey where I lost about 45 kilograms, about 100 pounds. And my goal weight would even be my phone password. So I'm seeing it every day. I'm reminding myself it every day. And it would even get to the point I'm cycling and a business has somehow got the number of my weight goal. Or like you're noticing it like that. But yeah, I think it's really just understanding your goals and setting deadlines as well, and creating smart goals, which are specific, measurable, actionable, relative, and time trackable. Yeah. How important is goal setting for you?
It's important, but I'm also flexible. I'm not. It's not as important as it used to be in terms of like being strict with it. I know that the purpose of a goal is for me to go a certain direction. Sometimes I'll exceed it, sometimes I won't exceed it, but it's not necessarily always to reach the goal. It's to guide me in that direction.
Yeah, and I think we got to understand what parts we can control or can't control. Exactly. I mean, even in the like content space, it's not even about how many views you get. It's about how much output you're putting there, and things that you can control, like the quality of what you're putting out there. Yeah. How important do you see social media in this day and age, and even with your business?
Well, it's inescapable. It's important. It's a hindrance and a tool. It's about riding the bicycle between hindrance and tool, and it sometimes is a struggle for me as well. I found myself in quite a not negative, but like a bit of a time-sucking pattern habit before Vipassana, for example. That completely got reset. I don't waste any time on social media anymore after Vipassana, so that was like a huge reset, just to circle back to where we started this conversation as well. That was one of my intentions, like healthy habits, reset my sleep, reset my eating, reset my social media. And when you're not a dopamine fiend, which I was, and I can get into those patterns sometimes, and I know how to regulate myself and then use the social media as the tool that it can be, then it's very powerful, of course.
100%. I mean, you say dope fiend, it makes me think of how common vapes are these days, and like how young children are vaping. I think that's just something that's very on my heart.
Yeah. That's a whole conversation that we could definitely go into another time.
Yeah, 100%. Well, is there any clothing thoughts from you? Otherwise, thanks so much for being on the podcast and for your time.
This has been so fun. Thank you for asking all the deep questions. My only closing thought is to never, ever, ever give up on yourself. Because if you try enough times, like in my book, you'll read about my history with drinking and with all sorts of like negative, or not negative, just harmful and unhealthy habits. And there were many times when I thought that that was it. And I was ready to give up on myself but in another breath, I was like, I'm too young for this to be my life. You know, I was lucky that I got into such deep trouble with some of these habits so young, because I was like, I'm in my 30s, this can't be my whole life. And so I had to dig deep, and I had to try again and again and again, and relapse 1,000 times and all of that. And I know for a fact that I got given 1,000 chances. I gave myself 1,000 chances, and that's the only reason why I'm here today doing what I do, writing books and coaching and speaking on stages and being on amazing podcasts and things like that. But just remember to never, ever, ever, ever give up on yourself.
100%. Keep going, everybody, and subscribe and check out her book and all of her links in the description. And thank you for your time.